In this video, I'm going to walk you through the optimal parts you need to build a CPU mining rig. We're going to go through CPU, motherboard, RAM, power supply, SSD, and more. And for each part, I'm not only going to tell you what part I recommend after doing loads of research, but also explain why that's the part to get. And sprinkle in with that, I'm also going to be dropping some money-saving tricks, so keep your eyes out for those. And obviously, as always, massive thank you to 𝗣𝗚𝗏 here on YouTube, who taught me most of what I know, both through his videos and through me pestering him with newbie questions all the time. So yeah, link to his channel will obviously be in the video description. And with that out of the way, let's just get right into it. First off, all of the parts I'm going to be talking about today will be linked down in the video description, and for full transparency, those will be affiliate links, which means the channel does get a small commission at no extra cost to you. And you guys using those links is actually a huge part of how I'm even able to afford to keep making videos like this. So thank you very much. It actually does make a difference and really means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you. But let's get started, and of course we're going to start with the actual CPU. And if you want a more in-depth analysis, I actually have a whole video about what CPU to get for mining. I'll link that down in the video description as well if you want to learn more after watching this video. But in short, right now the AMD Ryzen 9 series is what's going to deliver the best bang for buck in terms of being profitable without costing you a fortune. But so, which Ryzen 9 CPU should you get? Well, you kind of have two avenues to go down here. One which is the value for money route, and one which is the power efficiency route. For power efficiency, the one to go for is going to be the 7950X, but that's obviously going to cost you a pretty penny. And to me personally, it's not really worth it to get that extra power efficiency, since the cheaper CPUs are still plenty profitable and are going to cost you way less. Or in other words, even though you would be saving a little bit on power every day with the 7950X, it's going to take a long time for that small saving to add up enough to cover the extra money you spent building a 7950X mining system. So what are those cheaper CPUs then? Well, it's the 3900X and the 5900X. And they are kind of so similar in terms of performance, and since they use the same chipset platform, more on that later, you can kind of just pick whichever one you can find cheapest. And the same thing kind of applies here too, where you could get the 5950X or 3950X instead, and they might offer a bit of extra performance and or power efficiency, but they're usually so much more expensive that that small performance increase isn't really worth that extra money. So for the rest of this guide, we are going to go with a build geared towards the 3900X or 5900X, but please let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see another video guide like this one, but for a 7950X build as well. But for now, let's talk motherboards for the 3900/5900X. So for motherboards, there's a lot to choose from, but they're all kind of the same based on what chipset they have. And they'll all have that chipset denomination in their product name. And the chipsets you're gonna wanna be looking for are the B450, X470, B550, or X570. And to be honest, just in terms of CPU mining, it really does not matter which one of those you go for. Just look around and see what the cheapest motherboard you can find that has any of those chipsets are, and you should be golden. Now, one little thing to note here is that if you are looking to eventually turn your CPU mining rig into some sort of proof of useful work rig, what motherboard chipset you get might actually matter, as they do differ in terms of amount and generation of PCIe lanes. And also, of course, different motherboard models will have different amounts of PCIe slots. But for your straight up CPU mining with a 3900X or 5900X, just go for the cheapest B450, X470, B550 or X570 motherboard you can find. And next, let's move on to RAM. Alright, RAM. This is probably the most complicated component for CPU mining, but I'm gonna break it down for you guys. So, first off, just like how in GPU mining there are some algorithms that are memory intensive and some that are core intensive, you kind of got that same thing going on for CPU mining. And for those coins that don't require a lot of RAM, which my impression is that that is the case for most coins, you can just go with one single stick of 8GB 3200 MHz CL16 RAM, although it usually works out cheaper to buy a set of two 8GB sticks. So if you're planning to build more than one CPU mining rig, picking up a 2-pack of 8GB sticks can be a big money saving. But then we get into the coin algorithms that do require high RAM speeds, and the most notable example here is the randomX algorithm that is used by, for example, Monero. Now, to be fair, Monero usually isn't really profitable to mine on residential electric rates anyway, but if you do want to set your mining rig up so that it could mine randomX properly in case profitability goes up, you're going to have to pay for faster RAM. And usually what you want to go for here is two sticks. You need two sticks per rig because you want to make use of the dual channel speed here. So two sticks of 8GB 3200 MHz, but this time CL14 instead of CL16. So there you go, that's the RAM. Now let's move over to power supplies. Power supplies are tricky, not because there is anything complicated going on, but because they are just always way over spec for what you need, and that actually creates a little bit of a problem. Let me explain what I mean. So a CPU mining rig usually only pulls around maybe 90 to 120 watts, but most power supplies that are available start at like at least 500 watts. And the issue is that power supplies are usually the most efficient at around 50 to 70% usage, meaning that a 1000 watt power supply uses the least amount of power when you're pulling around 500 to 750 watts through it. Wait, that was a really weird of saying that. What I mean is that there is an inefficiency between how much power your components are asking for and how much power the PSU actually pulls from the wall. For example, if your components are pulling 100 watts from the power supply might be pulling 110 watts from the wall. And that inefficiency is usually the lowest between 50 to 75% usage of the max wattage that the power supply is rated for. So in other terms, if the lowest rated power supply we can get is a 500 watt one and we're only pulling 90 watts, that's going to be really inefficient, and the power supply might be actually pulling over 100 watts from the wall. Obviously, there's also an additional con here, which is that a 500 watt power supply could theoretically power like 4 CPU mining rigs, but since they only come with one single 24-pin motherboard cable, you need to buy a whole power supply for every single CPU mining rig. Or do you? No, you don't, because there are loads of clever ways around this, but the easiest one is just to use one of these, a 24-pin splitter cable that lets you power 2 motherboards using a single power supply. Just make sure that you get a power supply that also comes with 2 CPU cables. This is very common nowadays, as many modern CPUs have support for extra power using 2 CPU power cables for like overclocking and stuff, but that's not needed at all for mining. So you can use that extra CPU power cable that comes with your power supply to power a secondary CPU mining rig together with a 24-pin motherboard cable splitter. And so yeah, there's another money-saving tip for you, using a single power supply to power 2 CPU rigs, so you only have to buy 1 PSU instead of 2. Plus, you'll pull ever so slightly less power too, since you'll be closer to that peak efficiency on the power supply. But I think you might all agree that that's still a bit of a clumsy solution, and there are actually a lot more you can do in terms of powering multiple CPU mining rigs in clever ways. And I do have a full video on that coming on the channel soon, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. But next up, let's talk about how you are going to store your operating system after a quick word from our sponsor. unMineable is a service that lets you mine like normal on your GPU or ASIC rigs, but be paid out in over 70 different cryptos, most of which are, well, unMineable. This is a great service for those of you who might want to build a diverse crypto portfolio without having to go through the hassle of giving away your personal information, paying exchange fees, and triggering taxable events when buying coins. Thanks to unMineable, you also don't have to make the choice between mining the most profitable coin and mining the coin that you actually want to hold long term. For example, my Jazz miner is the only rig in my farm that's been consistently profitable since the ETH merge. However, it mines Ethereum Classic, which isn't really a coin that I'm too keen on holding personally. But with unMineable, I can keep that same level of mining profitability, but be paid in different coins I actually do want to hold, like maybe Dogecoin or Flux or Bitcoin. Also, make sure you add hashtag #Seb to the end of your worker name to get a 25% discount on their fee. You do this in your miner batch file on Windows or in setup miner config in your HiveOS flight sheet. So, check out unMineable through the link in the video description and get started today. And to be honest, just go with the cheapest you can find here, which is probably going to be either a node name 120GB SSD from Amazon, or if you're using HiveOS, you can even just use an old USB memory stick. Because the speed of the drive you have your operating system on really doesn't matter, so just try and save as much money as you can here. Other than that, there isn't that much more to it, honestly. You could get some sort of frame or just go the cheap route of putting the build on top of the motherboard box, although that might not be the very best choice for fire safety. I have seen lots of people run rigs like that for years, no issue though, so I don't know. There are also some really cheap 3D printed motherboard stands that you can get, specifically for this. Or of course you can pick up a cheap open air frame from AliExpress, Amazon or eBay or something like that. But yeah, that really is it. Next up on the channel, stay tuned for a guide on how to actually put the mining rig together. Then we're gonna go through how to set it up in the BIOS, how to properly overclock, and lots of other cool CPU mining content that is coming to the channel. So again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss those.